Today, I'm very excited to introduce Lowen Partridge from Peartree Brand Strategy to the podcast. And Lowen is an extraordinary woman who has done many, many things in her life, but right now is a brand strategist who also works in family businesses. Welcome to the podcast, Lowen. So, Lowen, tell us a bit more about you and what you do now, and a little bit about how you got to where you are.
I'm a brand strategist, is the name of my business infers. And I set up my own consultancy about almost 30 years ago. It'll be 30 years next July. And for about 20 of those years, I've been specialising in brand strategy. And coincidentally, about the same time I started working in brand strategy, I started getting involved with family businesses. I was doing a postgrad certificate course in wine marketing, and I had to do an elective, and I happened to be working with some family business wineries at the time. And I couldn't understand why I'd leave on a Friday and the managing director had agreed to do all these sorts of things. And then I'd get a call on the Monday saying, oh, look, my brother dropped in over the weekend and I think we should put a hold on things we decided on Friday. So, and we kind of reschedule. And so I thought family businesses just don't operate the way non-family businesses operate. And so I thought I had to know a bit more about how family businesses work. So I did that elective. And I was absolutely fascinated by it. It's the most interesting area because it's all about people and all about psychology and interactions. But importantly, if family businesses can actually get their head around the way the family business operates and that they instigate certain guardrails around how they operate, then they can be really successful. But unfortunately, a lot of family businesses don't do that. And so they wind up having a lot of disharmony and breakups in the family. And then usually the business goes south as well. So, yeah, I also realised that there weren't too many marketers and brand strategists who had an understanding of the way family businesses operated. So from a marketing perspective actually gave me a point of difference. So that's why I kind of pursued those two.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And marketing is about know thyself, isn't it? It's about know who you are. But also then when you overlay that with governance and getting clear, then that creates a safety net. Because it's pretty hard to create governance without having some understanding about who you are or what you're trying to achieve, I would have thought.
Absolutely. And both with brand strategy, which then flows on to marketing, because the marketing should reflect the brand that you want to be. And when a family is addressing its governance, you always start with purpose, vision, and values for both. You know, what's the purpose of the family being in business? What's the purpose of this business, of this brand? What's the vision for the brand? What's the vision for the family being in business? And what are the values that the family share that they're going to draw on when they're running the family business? And what are the values that the brand has?
And is it easy to get that alignment?
Yeah, there has to be some level of alignment. You know, you're not going to get a family that really cares about community and they've got a product which is anti-community.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there is going to be some overlap, but there will be some values that the family might have in the way they deal with one another that may not be relevant to the brand.
So where do you start, family or business?
Whichever opportunity comes up first, really. They're both intertwined.
Okay. Because there's two lines there. That you the family and the business.
Yeah, well, sorry, where do I start? Sorry, I thought you meant where I started in terms of addressing the brand or addressing the family. Is that what you
Well, yeah, I suppose it's both of those things. It's which when you're thinking about what are the family's purpose, is it the family's purpose or is it the business purpose? Like which one sort of is there one that's more important or drives it more than the other?
It depends on what the critical issue is that the family business is facing at the time.
Okay.
if a new generation is coming in, the next generation, often that's when they'll approach me to help them address the brand.
Mm-hmm.
And then they will discover that I'm an accredited family business advisor as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll ask me to come in and help with that. The brand work is a lot easier to sell internally than addressing the family governance.
Who knew? But it must bring everything to a head, because in order to make those decisions around branding, they have to work out who they are as a family.
Yes, that's true. Although when it comes to the brand, it also includes a lot of non-family employees and senior executives that are part of the executive team, the leadership team. So it can operate independently in some ways, but yeah, there's definite overlap, especially if the brand carries the family name.
Yes. Yes. So from the point of view of governance, so you've got all of this happening, but governance is then creating the rules around how we're going to work together. And does that come out of that process, or is that a separate process? Like,
It can be
how does
quite
that
a
work?
separate process. I have
Okay.
family businesses coming to me just to work on
Governance.
the governance. And I should state here that I work pretty well exclusively in the area of family governance, so the way the family relates to the business. But I do explain to them that they not only have to have a governance structure for the family, but they also have to have a governance structure in place for the ownership,
Mm-hmm.
because the family, not all family members are owners of the business.
No.
They have to have a governance structure for the board, and they have to have a governance structure for the business. So there's a little bit of overlap between the board and the business, but the board sort of sits between the owners and the business. So if I talk about business governance, I'm talking about having regular executive meetings, having a business plan, making sure that the business actually has developed a roadmap for where it wants to go in the next 12, 18, 24 months. Whereas the board has a longer view and a more sort of overview of the business. So
Mm-hmm.
they're looking at long-term strategy
Mm-hmm.
and the appointment of senior executives and representing the interests of the owners. But the owners have to have a governance structure as well, in that they have owner meetings, shareholder meetings.
Yeah.
But in the case of a family, it's, they're the owners. And then you have to have the family governance.
Yes.
And you have to have rules whereby family members just can't go. We talk about the 4-room model. And
Yes.
so I've discussed the family governance, which is a family room, the owner governance, which is the owner's room, the board governance, which is the board room, and the business governance, which is the management room, business and the management room. And what we try to help families understand is that if you're in the family room
Mm.
and you've got your family hat on, you can't go into the other 3 rooms without being asked. Just the way if you're an owner, you can't go into the boardroom if you're not a board member
No.
without being asked.
Yes.
When I say going into the room,
I
I'm
know what you
using
mean.
that figuratively.
Yeah. So that creates at least 2 rooms that a business that's not a family business has to deal with.
Which is the board and the business.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So
And ownership. I mean, arguably, there are three rooms that non-family businesses should be addressing:
yeah.
ownership,
Yeah.
board, and business.
Yeah.
It's the family
The
room
family.
that changes everything.
Which room has the most challenges?
It depends on the challenges that the business is facing. They will all bleed into one another. If the business is having difficulties and there are huge challenges in the business, that's going to affect the family, because there will be family members who are working in the business who are terribly worried about what their role is in the business to try and get them out of that issue. If you're a family member, you're worried about how that's impacting if the business is going badly and it goes under, how is that going to affect the reputation of the family? And if you're an owner, you're going to be thinking about, well, what's going to happen to the value of my shares and my dividends?
Yeah. So what's the type of situation where a family calls you in? Like what is the crisis that they go, because it would be a crisis, that something's happened,
Yeah.
I'd imagine most of the
And
time.
Kate, I must say, when there's a crisis, and that implies that there are terrible things happening, and people aren't getting on or whatever, I would bring somebody like you in, because
Okay.
I'm not qualified to sort out those sorts of issues.
Mm-hmm.
I come in usually when the is thinking about succession, and they should have been thinking about this before and set them all up before, but they're wanting to establish the rules for handing over the business to the next generation, and they're concerned about which child they should choose. They're concerned about, if I hand over the business to the next generation and yet I'm dependent on the business for my well-being, for my
Mm-hmm.
income as a shareholder,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want the kids to stuff it up because my
Yes.
future is dependent.
Yes.
And sometimes they don't trust the kids.
Yes.
So, there are all of those things happening. It's usually when they're thinking about succession
Okay.
that they will come to me and they will say, we need to address how we're going to do this. And so I will start off by helping them put together a family charter,
Mm-hmm.
which outlines, first of all, we discuss purpose, vision, and values, as I mentioned earlier. And then we will look at what are the rules going to be for the way the family is going to relate to the business.
Mm-hmm.
What are the rules going to be about employment?
Mm-hmm.
Who gets to be employed? What do they get to be paid?
Yeah.
Who within the family can be promoted? What are the rules going to be for when there's a promotion going at work? How that's addressed?
Yeah.
Can in-laws work in the business?
Mm-hmm.
Can stepchildren work in the business, or is it only going to be blood family that are going to work in the business? So that's just one area. That's
Yeah.
just employment. Then we've got things like, well, what about succession? How are we going to handle succession? And then what are the rules going to be? You need a dividend policy. What are the rules going to be for selling shares and transferring shares? Do the children have to buy their shareholding, or will it be gifted but only when the parents die?
Mm-hmm.
All of these things are quite legitimate rules to have,
Mm-hmm.
so long as they've been discussed and agreed to.
And I love that. I love having the conversation, getting clear. Tell me about the pushback, because I imagine that, and when I talk about a crisis, for the person who's considering the succession, they have come to a realization that their time has to eventually come to an end. So what does that look like? And I now need help. So they're, in their mind, they're ready for this conversation. But if it's not been on the table before, it has the potential to create conflict, in that suddenly we're talking about something we've probably gossiped about and had some ideas but not really talked about. Like, I just imagine the family dynamics when we put that on the table. That's a huge responsibility to hold in that moment. Does it feel like that? Or
Everything is driven by self-interest.
yes, I can imagine.
And I might add that it's not always the incumbent that will come to me. Sometimes it starts with the next gen, because
Yeah.
they feel that, they've been given responsibility for running the business, but they don't know what their parents are going to do in terms of
Yeah.
transition of ownership.
Yes.
And, we've heard horror stories of where the kids have been working in the business, and maybe just two children have been, out of three, have been
Mm.
working in the business. And they've reached their early to mid 50s, and suddenly the parents sell the business without telling the kids. And hang on, I could have done so many other things and not work for the family business,
Yeah.
how am I going to get another job? Discussion is terribly important.
Mm.
But as soon as you start talking about rules, and because my job is to facilitate the
Mm.
conversation and provide them with the framework for discussion,
Mm.
inevitably some people will realise that they've been on a very good wicket and things might change.
And that's uncomfortable too.
Yeah, they're usually it's a case of the biggest issue is when all of the family members have been paid the same, regardless of the job that they've been doing.
Yes.
And then in order to instigating a governance structure for the family is just professionalising the
Mm.
family. And that means that they have to professionalise the way they deal with the family working in the business.
Yeah.
And so if you're the CEO, but your younger sibling is the marketing manager, and yet you're being paid the same amount, that's not particularly fair. You don't have equal responsibilities.
No. So
Clearly the marketing manager is going to get a bit worried.
Well, yes.
And then, of course, let's not forget the in-laws.
Oh.
Because let's say that there are two brothers who are working together, and then it becomes apparent that one of the brothers is, as a result of this process, is going to be paid more than the other. You can imagine what the sisters-in-law are going to be like.
Yeah. Fairness is always, or perceptions of unfairness will always lead to conflict.
Well, it's about the difference between equality and fairness, because they're not the same.
No, they're
And
not
that's
the same.
something that I talk a lot about. Things will not be equal, but we will be fair and reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah. But there must be a moment when people catch their breath and go, but, and then let it go. But so it's quite confronting. And so this is, I think it goes to get your house in order as quickly as possible if you can, because the longer you leave this as outside of, without control, without governance, probably the more stressful it's going to be for people involved when we suddenly introduce governance.
Yes, and if you don't introduce governance, then it'll be the law of the jungle. The family side, the family room, if you like, becomes very dysfunctional. And so all sorts of subtle powers are used to get what people want. Yeah, which is not, because the family side of the business generally wants harmony.
Yes.
People to get on.
Yes.
But that's diametrically opposed to the business system that wants profit.
Absolutely.
And the ownership system that wants power. So you've got conflict already, just in the way that what the systems want, what the agenda is in each of the systems.
How do you hold people accountable to not being in the wrong room? I mean, in corporate, we have meetings after the meetings. We already have people in the wrong room. They go to a meeting, then they come out and they walk into another room and they have another meeting. So I'm anticipating that this happens a lot in this environment as well.
Well, it does, but once, it's like everything. It's like when you go to a concert, and right at the beginning of the concert, they say, would you please turn off your mobiles?
Yes.
And then if somebody's mobile goes off in the concert, everybody looks, and, they're taggers, and there's, lots of...
Yes.
So,
not well.
Yep. So bringing it out into the open and having the rules that everybody knows what they are and what's expected of them puts the spotlight on them if they're not adhering to the rules.
Yeah.
And then that's where you do need a structure for not policing it, but for accountability.
Yeah.
So in the boardroom, it's going to be the board that holds people to account, and especially the chair hold people to account. In the family room, it's the family council.
Yes.
So if you've got an issue so the council is like the way the board operates for the business, the family council operates.
Yes.
Between the family and the business. So if a family, and this is in their charter,
Yep.
if they've got a grievance, then there's a grievance policy in the charter. So they just go to the charter and work out what they do. But if it's the very first step is to go to the family council and get the family council to deal with it. And then not the individual, but the chair of the council will talk to the chair of the board.
Right. So how long does this process theoretically, how long does this process take from when somebody comes to see you? Like, are we talking 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, all of the above?
Some take 10 years.
Okay. Yeah.
The shortest, I had one family that took 2.5, 3 years. The shortest I've done this in is 14 months. Most families come to me and they think they can knock it over in 3 months. The only way that would work would be if it was a small family. So there weren't all that many. The biggest issue is trying to get everybody together to attend the sessions to work out what the rules are going to be. And you want everybody to be involved because you get buy-in then. They've had a say. They know how the discussion has gone. They understand why that guideline is the way it is because I was present when we were discussing it. So participation is really important. So the bigger the family, the harder it is to get people together because, time is precious. And we're talking about a family business where there are usually kids are going to have to be considered, and it's usually the grandparents that look after the kids but they're going to be busy.
So there's and families are complicated anyway. Like families, we're not one size fits all. There's intergenerational relationships, sometimes intergenerational trauma. There's a whole heap of other factors that play into how we get on and how easy it is to then create a set of rules around this business, I imagine.
Absolutely, Kate. And you can imagine how more complex the family businesses become when the cousin generation is in the business.
Yes.
So you've had the parents, let's say, parents start the business, and then the siblings, their children come into the business, and then their children, the cousins, then come into the business. Now, the reason it becomes more complex is because when you've got siblings working in the business, they're directly related to the owners, the parents. So they understand how dad did things.
Yeah.
They understand the values, they grew up with them. And even though 2 kids in the same family or 3 kids in the same family will be quite different, and they will have a slightly different experience because of where they fit into the family, but also the era in which they're born. Siblings who are 4 years apart can have, society changes in 4 years. So things are different. However, they still do generally share the same values. But then those siblings marry other people who come from families with all sorts of different values and laws.
Absolutely.
And so their children are going to be quite different in some respects from their cousins. So how do you pull that together to create the shared values?
It's a lot. And in my experience of working in family business, some of those parent relationships are already strained because there is thoughts that dad doesn't value the work that I do, or I'm not good enough, or, so I've often been involved where they're particularly parents, this is the way we do things here. Very hard to let go of my way of doing things. And I don't trust you, next generation, to do things properly. And so I can't let go. So I said I'm going to retire, but I'm not. So that doesn't happen. Or I'm going to, I've been in one business where I'm going to come into work every day and make sure you're doing the right thing. I imagine you do a fair bit of work in that space as well. How do you work with sort of that challenging behaviour?
Well, we always go back to the purpose, vision, and values. You know, what's the purpose of the family business?
Mhm.
And if it's to create wealth for the family, which is usually why it's there, but they'll also have other things like we want to bring the most interesting design. Let's say it's an architectural firm. We want to
Hmm.
bring the most interesting designs to housing
Mhm.
in South Australia, let's say.
Mhm.
When you've got an incumbent who wants to hang around, it's important that the next generation, I mean, they've got to be credible. They've got to prove their worth. And the way they do that is by the parent stepping away a bit. In family business, we don't talk about succession. We
Mhm.
talk about transition
Mhm.
because you can't, I mean, sometimes it happens, you know, in the case of an accident or a life limit, you know, the parent dies unexpectedly, then the next gen has to take over.
Yes.
But when you've got the time to transition, then you do it a step at a time.
Yeah.
You know, you talked about leadership earlier, and leadership in family business is absolutely critical. The parents have to show leadership in the way they identify what they need to do in order to bring the next generation up.
Yes.
They need to identify education that the kids need, experiences that they need, identify mentors that they can put them in touch with to help them develop.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because the kids not only have to build credibility with their parents, they also have to build credibility with non-family employees.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
A tough gig for the next generation.
Oh, yeah. It is really it's really hard. It's quite interesting in some of the cases that I've been involved in. They often have built that relationship with other staff and with other people, but they still don't have authority with the parent. There's not a give. Not a give. And
Yeah.
then there's sympathy, which is not helpful. You know, poor so and so, they're having to put up with this behavior. Like it can become a little bit toxic when we're addressing the situation about the transition or succession very late. Like we haven't discussed this until the parent is, you know, really truly should have, if in a perfect world, stepped away sooner to give this person some free air to lead the business and to prove themselves. But there's sort of like, I don't trust you, I don't trust you, I don't trust
But
you.
it's a step at a time, and usually the next Jenners will be given opportunities.
Yes.
They'll start on the floor
Yeah.
in the business, and then
Yes.
they'll get promotions.
Yes.
Ideally, they would have worked outside of the business
Hmm.
for a period of time and earned their stripes
Yes.
outside. They will have
Yes.
some qualifications.
Yes.
If they haven't done that, then they need to look for ways that they can build that knowledge and experience while they're still in the business. And that's where courses can be helpful. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
might do an MBA.
Mm-hmm.
They might join an industry group and become an office holder in the industry group
Mm-hmm.
so that they're building their knowledge and experience and credibility outside of the business, even if they haven't been able to do it before they joined the business.
Yeah.
So lots of things that can be done.
It is such a fascinating space, and it is such a big part of Australian business,
Yeah.
isn't it? Huge. How many? Third? More than a third.
Oh, I can't remember the figures.
But it's
It represents the largest body of businesses.
mhm.
I can't remember the figures that they actually employ. It's over 50%. I think it's like
Yeah,
55%
yeah,
of people who are employed by family businesses.
which is enormous.
And the problem is that there are a lot of family businesses out there that don't realize they're family businesses. They think they're plumbers
Yes,
and
yes.
and they've got their kids working in the business. But I think it's becoming more they're becoming more conscious that they are a family business. because they're becoming more conscious that being a family business actually adds value to their brand,
Yes,
which flips over to the other part of my business.
absolutely. I think it is a fascinating area. I think it is so complex. The psychology of it is extraordinary. And what I'm hearing is that if you are in a family business, governance, get your house in order, explore governance as quickly as possible. Make sure it's in place early,
Absolutely.
not something which is in response to a problem that comes along.
Kate, can I give a plug to Family Business
You
Association?
can.
Yeah, because you and I are both members,
Yes.
and I've been involved with FBA for 20 years. If you're serious about getting your house in order, really, I can't recommend more highly joining FBA. It's there to help family businesses get that education, to provide a community where they can share, their issues. Whenever I invite a new person to come to an FBA event, every one of them says, everyone's so friendly.
Yes.
And I started talking about some things, and I realized that I wasn't alone, that all these
Yeah.
other people had exactly the same issues that I'm facing. And then they shared with me what they'd done.
Yeah.
It's an amazing organization. And, if you're interested in becoming serious about the way you run your family business and you want it to hang around for a long time, it goes on to
Yeah.
the next generation, then I'd really encourage people to explore joining Family Business Association.
Yes. It's a very generous association. The people involved are very generous, and it's such a joy to not be alone, to have
Yeah.
that
And
camaraderie.
we've got companies, big companies like Detmold and Hagues who are members, and then we've got small family businesses, little plumbing
Yeah.
companies or electricians, or
Yeah. That's
so
fantastic. Fantastic.
size doesn't matter.
No, size doesn't matter. Thank you so much, Lowen. This was a fantastic chat. It is critically important. I just always think that we feel safer when we know what the rules are. And then we don't have to spend a lot of time worrying about things that may or may not happen. But it's like road rules. Like, we can drive on the road with lots of people every day because we all know the rules, and we trust people to do the right thing. And we get to control the rules within the family business when we have these conversations.
Yeah, and just one last thing, that once the rules are set, it's not as if they're set in concrete
No.
either, because times change. Sometimes, the rules are sort of set in a theoretical sense because some of the things they would have experienced, but others not. And so, as General Rommel said during the Second World War, he was on the other side, but he said, no plan ever survives its first contact. But what is important is that you've actually thought through, and it gives you the ability to be flexible.
It also creates the space to have the conversation that you wouldn't otherwise have, which is so important. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And
Thanks,
we will
Kate.
speak again
Yeah, it's been fun.
about all things branding on another day.
Okay, the next one. Okay,
All
you're
right.
on.
Cheers.